What's going on, YouTube? Today we're going to be continuing our series of the top 10 top 10 players at each position in the NFL for next year. Also, a little side note, I would really love to live stream some of the games, especially the playoffs next year for the NFL. However, looking at it, it's confusing as hell, and if any of you guys have any experience with that and could help me out a little bit, that would be much appreciated. I'm sure I'll figure it out eventually, but yeah, really confusing. So yeah, but without further ado, let's get into the video. Starting off with our honorable mentions, it was really difficult. Let me tell you, the receivers was one of the most difficult lists to create, and it's pretty insane having three guys as talented as this on the outside. Keenan Allen, I think at the end of the day, he is a great receiver and has amazing hands, but I think, especially the production, giving what Justin Herbert did last year, is kind of underwhelming, honestly. Obviously, it was still close to a 1,000-yard season. I just don't think it can compare with some of the other guys on this list. Terry McLaurin, he's really, really close to being in that top 10. I really think the thing is that holding him back is that lack of a quarterback. Perhaps Fitzpatrick might be a bit of an upgrade over Alex Smith. He might be a bit of a downgrade. We don't really know. I think that's really is what is holding Terry McLaurin back, though, is that quarterback. But if he gets that, I think he'll be a top 10 receiver, undoubtedly. And then Justin Jefferson, he had an amazing season, obviously the best rookie receiving season of all time. And I really, really, really want to put him on this list. I just can't at the end of the day. You have to be like, and obviously he was really freaking good, but I just think there are still definitely some receivers in the NFL I would take over him. Even though he's young, he has a very bright future, and he'll most likely be on this top 10 list next year. I just can't put him above, especially our number 10 guy, Julio Jones. I get it. He did not have the best year. He dealt with some injury problems, not the craziest production. And obviously, he had basically half the production that Justin Jefferson had. I can't put Justin Jefferson over Julio Jones. Julio Jones, for a while, was the most dominant receiver in the NFL, and it really wasn't even close. This guy is still an incredible talent, and my prediction right now for him is the Patriots. I haven't updated it yet since the news he was kind of officially out just came out yesterday. But I do predict the Patriots here for Julio Jones. If I'm going to give my official prediction right now, I'd say probably the Patriots get Julio Jones in a 7th-round pick, and then the Falcons are probably going to receive like N'Keal Harry, a 3rd-round pick, and then like a conditional 6th or 7th-round pick. But yeah, so Julio Jones, I get it. He didn't have the production, but he was dealing with some injury problems. He is still an elite wide receiver, and I just can't put Justin Jefferson above him. Someone I can put above him, however, is Chris Godwin, who technically had better production. Now, obviously, he played more games than Julio. I think being a number 2 is going to just naturally limit your production, though. When you have one of the other better receivers in the NFL across from you most of the time, and I still think Mike Evans is much better than Chris Godwin, your production is just going to be limited. So I think if he was given that number 1 role, he'd probably be a 1,000-yard receiver pretty easily. So that's why he is here at number 9. I can put him over Julio Jones just because, again, he has a very bright future, and I really do love his game. But here at number 9, it was, again, this entire list was very difficult to pinpoint. He could be lower, he could be higher. And you could make a case for any of these guys, even not on the honorable mentions, to be above him, but it's just kind of where I think he belongs personally. At number 8, I have Kenny Golladay. Now, obviously, did not have good production last year just because of injuries and stuff. But if we look at his 2019 stats, 1,200 yards, 11 touchdowns, 18 yards per play, that's some pretty insane numbers considering how bad that Lions team was. Definitely the only reason that Matt Stafford had any sort of passing game, because Kenny Golladay is an extremely talented receiver. I think he's going to be great for the Giants. However, I do have him kind of lower on this list than some other guys because a big reason I think the Giants aren't going to do well next year is because I really do not trust Daniel Jones, and I think that's going to limit the production of Kenny Golladay. Other than that, though, an extremely talented receiver. As long as he stays healthy, he will create great production. Because even if he does have Daniel Jones, he'll probably still have like a 1,000-yard season, if not very close. I just don't think he'll be as elite as some of these other receivers, such as number 7, Allen Robinson. This dude is super underrated. I mean, this guy really should be a top 5 receiver every year, but he's always just been held back by his quarterback. I mean, he's had to deal with Blaine Gabbert, Nick Foles, this year Andy Dalton. Like, he's never had a good quarterback throwing to him, and yet he still puts up consistent, if not 1,000 yards, very close to 1,000-yard seasons. Look at last year with Mitch Trubisky throwing to him and Nick Foles and stuff. 1,250 yards, 6 touchdowns, 102 receptions. Allen Robinson has been one of the best receivers in the league for a while now. I am lower on the list just because his production is always going to be limited with quarterbacks. I'm going to take that into account here. And so, while 7 is obviously still a great placement for him, he could be higher. He should be higher. If Justin Fields works out, this guy could be a top 5 receiver at least one time in his career, perhaps in a couple years or so. But that's if he stays with Chicago. Obviously, I would love to go see him play for a competitor and finally show who he really is, because he's one of the most underrated players in the NFL. However, people are starting to finally notice his talent. Number 6, Mike Evans. Like I said with Chris Godwin, Evans is just going to be higher on this list. Obviously, he's the number 1, but the production for Mike Evans is just unmatched. I mean, I think he's the first receiver in NFL history to have 7 straight 1,000-yard seasons to start off his career. I mean, 14.5 yards per play, 13 touchdowns. I mean, this dude is an insane receiver. And he was dealing with, Jameis Winston for years there. And obviously Winston throws it downfield a lot, but even then he's catching them. Mike Evans is a crazy talent. And again, one of the more underrated players in the NFL. I don't think he quite cracks my top 5, as I do think there are kind of, I think there's a number 5 guy I really like, and then I think the top 4 is pretty clear cut. But talking about the number 5 guy is going to be DK Metcalf, who is just maybe the most fun receiver to watch in the NFL. This guy has a super, super bright future ahead of him. I mean, last year, 83 catches, 1,300 yards, 15.5 yards per play, and 10 touchdowns. Like, when you're sharing the ball with Tyler Lockett, too, that's really crazy production. DK Metcalf is one of the most insanely athletic players in the NFL as well. Like, he's just on another level. DK Metcalf is crazy, and 5 seems like such a perfect placement for him right here. Now, he can be the number 1 in a year or two, honestly. That's how good he is. He has a super, super bright future ahead of him, and I really I'm literally really looking forward to seeing his career play out. At number 4, this is where it really got difficult, but I'm going to put Tyreek Hill. 1,300 yards, 14.5 yards per play, 15 touchdowns, nothing to sleep on, obviously. That is number 1 type receiver production. But I think you got to also look at the fact that, while he is sharing the ball, that offense is very high powered, and it can be pretty easy to lose track of this guy. So he gets some help from that. And he definitely does use a lot of his speed, and if you figure out how to stop that speed, he can be stopped kind of easily, because he's a lot more than just his speed. That's why he's the number 4 receiver in the NFL. But, if you look like at the Buccaneers in the Super Bowl, they found a pretty easy way to slow him down after he obliterated them back in the regular season. And so while he can definitely destroy your team, he can also be stopped pretty easily, especially if Mahomes doesn't have an offensive line. So, I think he's the number 4 receiver. He's obviously still an insanely talented receiver, but just because there is that kind of factor to where he can be stopped, I think that's got to take him down a little bit, but he's still obviously the number 4 receiver. Number 3, maybe a lot of people are going to disagree with this. Like I said, it was very hard to decide, but I'm going to put Davante Adams. 1,400 yards, 115 receptions, and 18 touchdowns last year. Obviously had a crazy year, was in the running for Offensive Player of the Year. And you can make a very strong case to put him number 1 on the list. The issue is that he's more than likely not going to have Aaron Rodgers anymore, and let me tell you, I think that's going to hurt his production majorly, because I don't think Jordan Love's going to be having an Aaron Rodgers type season anytime soon. I don't think he ever will. And so I love Davante Adams. I think he is the best receiver in the NFL if he has the quarterback. And again, I'm taking that into consideration here. Just because he's not going to have Rodgers, I feel like that's got to take him down a few spots. He'll still be amazing, obviously. Being the literally only receiving threat on the team last year, putting up those kind of numbers is insane when they're always focusing on you. But he got the job done, and he's still an insanely talented receiver. I just feel like that lack of Aaron Rodgers definitely has to take him down a couple spots, but I definitely would understand why you have him number 1. He probably is the best receiver in the NFL. Number 2, and at this point you can probably tell who number 1 is, Stephon Diggs. Wow, I mean, 1,500 yards and 8 touchdowns, 12 yards per play, 127 catches. Yeah, this guy was crazy. He was also in the running for Offensive Player of the Year. He's not going to fall down this time because he still has Josh Allen. I think Josh Allen could have potentially even a better year, which means Stephon Diggs could have even a better year. He could be number 1 next year on this list. You know, it really depends, but Stephon Diggs, again, obviously an insanely talented receiver. I keep saying that, but a lot of these guys really are. You know, he's got a fair amount of receiving threats on the team, but none of them are like really good receiving threats. He's the only really good one on there, and he gets the job done definitely. Again, just, you know, the way he runs his routes and stuff, I think, you know, leaving Minnesota was probably the best thing that could have happened to him. I'm predicting him to get his first Super Bowl ring next year. So yeah, I really like Stephon Diggs, but number 1 is going to be DeAndre Hopkins for me. Last year, 115 catches, 1,400 yards, 12 yards per average on plays, and 6 touchdowns. At first glance, maybe you'd say, you know, well, he didn't have the best production, so why is he number 1? I believe DeAndre Hopkins could have an unimaginable season next year. The Cardinals are kind of my surprise team, my predicting surprise team for next year. I think Kyler Murray could be in contention for MVP. And if you have Kyler Murray playing at that kind of a level, naturally DeAndre Hopkins is also going to be playing at that kind of a level as well. Obviously, he's, you know, been one of the best receivers in the NFL for years now, but I think given the fact that the Cardinals improved so drastically over the offseason, I think he's primed for a monster year. I think he'll probably be off. I didn't pick him, but he is probably my second most likely pick for Offensive Player of the Year next year. I think DeAndre Hopkins is going to have an incredible year with Kyler Murray, and that's just kind of my prediction right now. But again, I can understand where you have anyone on this list. You know, there could be guys that I didn't even show on this video that could be in your top 10. There can be a guy on here that's not in your top 10. You know, it's really hard to pick receivers, but I want to know your guys' receiver list. So go ahead and comment down below your top 10 receivers in the NFL. And that is going to be the video today. If you guys did like, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Next, we're going to be doing our tight end rankings. And we're also going to be doing our next episode of my Madden franchise soon. If you haven't checked that out, go ahead and check that down below. We're doing a Broncos franchise, and we got Aaron Rodgers. So starting off the regular season with our next episode. But yeah, so thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see all you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.